Okay. Hey, everybody. It is Shep Hyken here, and I hope that everybody can see and hear me. I see, hey, Grace, how are you? Let's see who else is coming on. Um, let's see. Claire, can you hear me? Yes, I hope everybody can hear me. Well, we are going to be talking about cult of the customer today. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up. Some exciting things have happened today. Just enough things to make me wonder, gosh, is all of this worth it? The internet went out. How could the internet go out? So about 4 minutes before the presentation, the internet goes out. I'm in my office. So I run home, which, by the way, is directly across the street from where I live. And hey, Jackie, back again. All right. And Anastasia, we're seeing lots of great people coming in here today. This is great. This is great. So I've come in, I've quickly reset. So what I want to do is I want to bring in a slide presentation, and I'm going to share my screen for just a moment. It's going to look really ugly because you get to see what's on my screen. Let's see. I'll go ahead, and if it lets me share it, let's share. Share. Oh, it doesn't seem to want me to share it. Share the screen. Need the screen. I don't have the screen. I don't need the screen. I'll just talk through the cult of the customer. So wonder why it's not allowing. StreamYard wants to share the contents. Choose what. Let's do the application window. There we go. Let's do this one. This is perfect. Learning quickly. And I'm going to hit this. Excellent. So I believe everybody should be able to see my window at this point. And if that is the case, I'm going to go back and, well, hold on. Let's see what we have here. Okay, well, we're going to do the best we can. Go back to my StreamYard. There we go. I know that you're seeing the ugly version of my slides. I'm trying to get those to look good and work well, but let's see. Go back and try it again. Okay, well, let's not worry about it, shall we? We'll go into the mode of my backup plan, which is just the fact that I know the content so well that I could just deliver it without slides, because isn't that the point? What happens if in the middle of a presentation, the projection system goes out? I've seen speakers go, oh no, what am I supposed to do right now? Well, this is one of those times we have nothing to worry about. We're going to talk about the cult of the customer. Now, even if you haven't bought the book, hopefully you read some of the articles. And what I'd like to do is, remember, this is a discussion, not just a presentation. So what I'd like to do is make sure that all of you have an opportunity to jump in, share your stories, and we'll talk. Hey, there's Yoakum. Nice to see you. There's so many people here that I recognize, and there's quite a few people coming on. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to make this a discussion. First, I do want to go through the 5 cults and what they're about, and then we'll get into just open it up for Q&A. So let's talk about it. What are the 5 cults? First of all, the cult of the customer. Interesting story about that book. The first version of that came out about 10 or 11 years ago. I started writing it about 12 years ago. I was approached by Wiley, a publisher, and they said, we'd like for you to publish a book. Would you be willing to do that with us or write a book? And I said, sure. And I had an idea that would be called The Customer Focus. And it would be based on a lot of the training that I do with all my clients. And they said, well, we have a different name in mind. It's Cult of the Customer. I go, cult. I don't know if I like that word cult. Cult's like a dirty word. Well, it is not really a dirty word, because as I did a little research, I found that cult is actually the root is in the Latin word cultus, which is about caring and tending. And I thought, wow, what if we can care and tend to our customers the way they'd want them to be? That's pretty good. And what if cult, we'll play off that word, becomes culture, and we ingrain a customer service mindset and experience into the people that we're working with. Wouldn't that be great? And our employees, create that culture. So cult works. I was still a little uncomfortable. So I happened to be at a meeting and I met a woman named Linda Kaplan Thayer. Now, you may not know who she is, probably don't, but she is she has done something very famous. Her ad agency came up with the company name or the advertisement for Aflac. You know what Aflac. That's her advertisement. She was a tiny little agency going up against huge agencies, trying to compete with them and win this big campaign. And people were saying, how are we going to get them to remember what AFLAC stands for? And they started referring to it as Aflac. And she looked over at somebody in her at the boardroom table, and it was one of her creative people. And she said to him, you know, whenever you say that, you sound like a duck, Aflac. And then she said, here, stick out your tongue. And he did it. And she grabbed his tongue and held it and said, now say it again. He went, Aflac. And she goes, that's it. That's it. And they created this campaign with the Aflac duck. And you know what happened? People remembered it. People noticed it. And I heard her speak about this story. And I said, Linda, I'm getting ready to do a book that has a title that's very different. I'm a little concerned that it might put people off. What is it? Cult of the Customer. She says, it's like Aflac. How so? She says, well, the word cult, it's going to draw attention. If you're looking at a bunch of business books in a bookstore on a shelf and you see the word cult of the customer, cult, what's that about? You just got noticed. Now, some people might not like the word cult. Some people don't really care about the word cult. Some are going to be so intrigued about it, they want to create a cult of their own, a cult of the customer, if you will. And that's how the word or the title Cult of the Customer came to be. I called my friends at John Wiley and Sons up and I said, let's do the book, Cult of the Customer, how to create an amazing customer experience that not just satisfies customers, but creates customer evangelists, people that will sing your praises. By the word, cult, evangelist. I love these words. And you'll see if you get into the book, we talk about mantras. And I love interesting and fun words. So with that in mind, I want to run through the 5 cults without slides, without support. Here they are. Number 1 is the cult of uncertainty. And this, by the way, is where all customers reside. Even if they've heard great things about you and you have the reputation for being the best at what you do, that uncertainty is, well, how's my experience going to be? So once they just start to do business with you, maybe they meet somebody that's going to help them. Maybe they're on the website and they're experiencing a fairly intuitive and easy process. You start to get into alignment with the company. You start to understand, oh, this is who they are. This is the way it's going to work. And then you start to experience them. The cult of experience is the actual experience that you have in that first interaction that you have with them. Now, ideally, that's a good experience. And then you decide you want to go back as a customer and do business with them again. But you're still a little bit uncertain. How's it going to be next time? Once again, you're back in the alignment. You're in the process and you're experiencing good. You like it. Ideally, better than average. Remember, last week we talked about moments of magic, better than average all of the time. So that's what amazing companies do. So if this experience is better than average and I come back again because I like it and I like it, hey, they're always friendly. They're always so helpful. They're always knowledgeable. I like this. You're starting to move into the cult or phase of experience, of out of experience and into ownership. This is really where you want to be. You want an owned experience. You want that customer to know that every time they do business with you, by the way, I'm using the word customer. It could be client. It could be patient. It could be member. It could be guest. It doesn't matter. Whatever you call the people who do business with you, they are your customers. And that's just the general term we're using. Your customer now owns the experience. One of the examples I use in the book is the idea about PayPal. I remember the first time I used PayPal, and just recently in the last year or so set up Venmo. I made sure it was perfect. I made sure it was right. I was very concerned. It took me a little while to do this. And then when I made my first transaction, I transferred money from one person to a next using this technology. I was very concerned I was going to do it wrong and I was going to give away my entire bank account. I was so careful. Probably took me 10 or 15 minutes to do that first PayPal transaction. Well, guess what? Today I can go on, I know exactly where to go. I click here, I click there, I type in the person's connection, their email address, and instantly they get their money. Takes me less than 60 seconds to do. And that's because I'm in the cult of ownership. I own that experience. I know what I'm supposed to do. And when it comes to a great service experience, I want your customers to know that when they do business with you, it's an owned positive experience. And by the way, if it's consistently and predictably better than average and they're owning it, you are now actually in the cult of amazement, which is where you want to be. This is, I'm going to call it customer service and experience utopia, if you will, because this is where your customers are saying, I love doing business with them. Again, they're always friendly, always knowledgeable. And even when there's a problem, and this is important, the moment there's a problem, the first time it happens, you're going to shift everybody right back to uncertainty. Your customers are going to go there and they're going to think, wow, how's this going to be worked out? And when they see how good you are at resolving the problem, they'll say, even when there's a problem, I know I can always count on them. And when that happens, you're actually training your customers to come to you when there is a problem because they know they can count on you. They have that experience with you. It's an owned positive experience. Hence, you're in the cult of amazement. Now, one last point I want to make about this is that your employees go through the same phases. Think about the employee the first time they come to work. You know, they apply for the job, they go through the interview process. You know, they've been told, hey, we'd love to have you work with us. They're excited, but they're still uncertain. Is this the company I really want to be at? I think it is. I hope it is. I hope I'm there forever, but I don't know. And then you get there and you're onboarded. Hence, you're put into the alignment process. Then you start to get comfortable over a short period of time. You know where your desk is. You know who the people are. You become friendly with them. You're starting to experience what it's like to work at this company. And then you own it. One day, it's just natural. You're there all of the time. And when you love working there and you enjoy it, and by the way, there's a concept I call fun, F-U-N, but it's not about having fun like a party. Fun stands for fulfillment, uniqueness, and next. When you feel fulfilled, when you're being used for your unique talents, which you're really good at, and when you're excited about what's next, well, guess what? You're in that cult of amazement as an employee. By the way, that concept of fun, just a little a preview. Next week, we're going to have another one of these virtual book clubs, and I'm going to be focusing on the book, The Amazement Revolution. And there's 7 ideas in the Amazement Revolution. And what happens, and I think it's number 3, is we talk about serious fun, fulfillment, uniqueness, and next. So we'll talk about that next week, but that's, you get the idea. Employees and customers together can go through these 5 cults. So with that in mind, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see, and let's take a look at anybody that has any questions out there, any comments. And Ricardo, my friend, he's over in Germany. Nice of you to join us. He says, now I can recognize you without the glasses on. So, all right. What's the number 1 secret to amazing my customers? Wow. The number 1 secret. There's so many, but I would say I'm going to give you 2 or 3 number ones. Number 1, in my mind, is that customer service is not a department. It's a philosophy to be recognized by everybody in the organization. And when it comes philosophical, then everybody's involved with it. So it's not just people on the front line. Number 2, I talked a little bit about this last week, that concept of being better than average all the time. And I talked about that today. I talk about that in almost every presentation. That's a pretty cool concept. If on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is bad and 5 is great, 3 is in the middle, that's average. Be just a little bit better than average all of the time. So companies will say, or customers will say about you and your company, I love them. They're always so knowledgeable, always friendly, et cetera, like we talked about before. That's what we're working on. So if you have, if you're a little bit better than average on a scale of 1 to 5, you're going to get more 5s for being a 3.5 consistently than you will for being a 5 one day, a 4 the next day, and maybe just average the day after that. It's the consistent and predictable experience. So that's what I would say is the number 1 secret to amazing customers. So thank you very much for that question. How about another one? Who's got? By the way, I can continue to talk, but I love when somebody has a question and can share their thoughts with us. I'm looking through the chat over here. We've got quite a few people. Hey, there's Jackie again. Yeah. You know what? Thank you. You were here last week, and I wanted to reach out to you and say hello. And there's Robert from Dallas. Hello again, my friend. We've had a couple of great conversations. Actually, on the phone, we talked about the different ways we can use our online program. So here's a good one. Let me bring it to the screen. What is the difference between the 2009 cult and the updated version? Wow. Well, that's a good question. I would say it's a lot of stats and facts have been changed. Anything that needed to be updated, there's not one statistic in the book that really that's relevant that's less than now about a year or so old. Maybe by now it's about a year and a half. The book came out just just recently. So I'd say probably within the last year. So that's number one. We even got rid of somebody. We had an example of somebody that now he's in jail. We had to get that guy out of the book. So that's the biggest difference is we modified some of the stories to make them relevant. We brought the information up to date, and we made sure the forms in the back of the book were clean and crisp and updated just to give it a little bit more, an easier look. By the way, the cult of the customer.com, cult of the, I urge you to go there, not just to buy the book, but there is a workbook that's there. And granted, if you have the book, it makes it easier to understand the workbook. But in the back of that workbook are a number of exercises. And I urge you to take a look at those exercises. And you'll find some that you really like. We talked about one last week, and I would have shown that Moments of Magic card again this week. The Moment of Magic card is probably what I would call the biggest culture transformation tool that we have. All we're asking you to do is to write down an example, 2 or 3 sentences, like on the size of an index card. So it's very small. 2 or 3 sentences on an example of when you created a positive experience for either an outside customer or an inside customer, somebody you work with, somebody you do business with, or as a colleague that's not somebody necessarily you do business with. And it could be a customer called, I called them back within an hour, they were so impressed. Well, there you go. That's a moment of magic. A colleague was working on a report, was worried they wouldn't hit the deadline. They had a little piece of research. I did it for them. I gave it to them. They were able to put it in the report, and they were easily able to hit their deadline. That's a great example internally. So what we want people to do is do this on a regular basis. Now, this may seem tedious. It should only take, however, 2 or 3 minutes to do. But here's the key. They give it to their manager, their supervisor, their boss. The boss has to take a moment to acknowledge the customer. That's great. By the way, you can do it in a meeting. Every Monday morning, we have a meeting, and I love hearing everybody share their moment of magic. And it's just a great positive way to start the meeting, and it makes me smile. I don't even have to give that kind of serious feedback about it unless it's something unique and special. But so many times, my assistant will say, we had a client that needed something. I got it to him or her very quickly. And she reads the email, and obviously they were happy. I go, I love that. Every client should be experiencing what that client received. So this little exercise does something really important. It not only makes everybody aware, it shows that everybody has the opportunity, whether in front of a customer or working just with a colleague, to create that magic, if you will, to create that positive experience. When it becomes ongoing, it becomes habitual. You would get into the habit, and all of a sudden you're aware, wow, this is a good moment of magic. Should I use that as my example? No, I'm going to wait for a better one. I know I'm going to get another one by the end of the week. And of course you do, on and on and on. So great. Here comes a comment. I really enjoyed the book, Anastasia. Thank you. We have a large group of volunteers rather than paid staff. Do you have any ideas for empowering a volunteer rather than a paid employee? Wow. So empowering is an important concept. Empowering means you're giving permission for people to do something. So if they're volunteering, I think that you appreciate their volunteering. Make sure that they are people that are put in the appropriate place for the job. For example, somebody wants to volunteer, but they're really introverted. Don't put them on the front line. Let's call it a charitable organization. Don't put them on the front line calling up strangers, soliciting them for money because they're introverted. They're going to hate volunteering for you and you're going to lose them. However, maybe somebody else does that. And what the introvert does, maybe they love working with numbers and they like looking at charts and they're extremely introverted. That's a great job for them to take the financial side and put it on paper. That's their job. They don't need to deal directly with the outside. They can do it on the inside. So first of all, make sure you've got good volunteers in the appropriate place. Number two, just like you would any employee that's paid, empower them to do what's right. In order to make that happen, you need to train them to do what's right. You need to train them to understand where the line in the sand is, if you will. Let me give you an example of a terrible, terrible empowerment story. So I was with my wife on a trip and we ran into another couple and we agreed to meet for breakfast the next morning. We went to the restaurant and almost all the tables were filled, except there was this little section that had two tops where it was a table with a chair on each side, and they were spaced enough apart where you can walk in between so that people could sit down on the other side. But there were like a bunch of them in a row, 4 or 5 or 6. And we thought, well, there's no bigger tables. So we asked the hostess, would it be okay if maybe you push those 2 tables together? That way we can just kind of sit next to each other a little bit closer. And this is what she did. She said, let me go check with my manager. The manager comes out. Here's what we want to do. No issue, pushes the tables together. That employee was not properly trained, or they would have known that was not a big deal to do. But the story continues because the next day we decided to meet for breakfast again. And we showed up, the exact same scenario was going on. Guess what? We asked that same hostess, can we do what we did yesterday? And you know what she did? She went to the manager to ask if it was okay. That is the antithesis of empowerment. We must give permission for our people, volunteered or paid, to make good decisions and to basically understand what the right decision is. And when they make the right decision, say thank you, pat them on the back. If they make a bad decision, explain to them why it was bad and make it an educational opportunity. And in both cases, good and bad, share those examples with other team members so they can learn what it is to do the right thing. They can learn where that line in the sand is. So I hope that this is helpful for you and that makes sense. So my friend Robert from down in Dallas, Shep, 5 of us just this week finished reading and discussing The Cult. Well, thank you. We came away with some great new ideas for our team. However, most of the team is part-time, so we may only see them once a week or less. Any tips for getting them to buy in when we see them so infrequently? Well, here's what I would do. In a beginning of the day meeting to kick the day off with these folks, and then maybe an end of the shift, a post-shift meeting, just to find out how things were and kind of set the ball in motion for next week when you see them again. And you can do this moments of magic exercise written, which is ideal because you capture people doing, the people capture themselves doing the right thing and writing them down. But if at the end of a shift, you said, hey, everybody, we're going to meet for 5 minutes. Come on together. Great shift. This is what I saw. This is where we can learn. By the way, Sally, Bob, Susan, whomever, do you have an example of when you took care of one of our customers or guests today? And they'll think about it and they'll share that example and just talk about it for a little while, just a minute or so. Get a second one and tell everybody, hey, next week, same thing's going to happen. We're going to meet at the end and we're going to talk about the good stuff that happened throughout, or the good, I say stuff, terrible word, the good interactions that we had with our customers. And I want you to be prepared, because if I didn't call on you, I may call on you next week, or maybe I'll call on you again. Be prepared to share one. And that'll kind of set the tone for the following time that they're all together. Excellent question. All right, we've got about another 5 minutes or so before we wrap up here. Any other great, oh, here, Ricardo, I just want to mention, Grace, I'm going to come back to you in a second, but Ricardo says, I read both versions and the new one is adapted to our reality, but the inspiration part is still original and actually very actual. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's a very nice compliment. I would like to think that we were able to update the book. And by the way, that Moments of Magic book that many of you read last week or prepared for or have read in the past, That book was written back in the 1980s. And I mentioned this at the beginning of that live stream, is that I rewrote the book about 6 years ago. And I remember saying, if you want to get something to somebody quickly, we'll fax it to them or use this thing they now call email. I have a CompuServe address, and it was a bunch of numbers, and it was so archaic. Well, I'm looking at the book again. And I'm thinking, wow, it's only been 5 or 6 years. I think it's time to give it another update. So even though the concepts in these books are timeless, don't be discouraged if you see an old stat or a fact that maybe it's not quite as relevant, but the concept behind the stat or fact surely is. All right, we had a comment up there from Grace. Expand further on fun, F-U-N. Yes, Grace. So fun. Fun is for fulfillment, uniqueness, and next. The beginning of the chapter of the book, and you know what? I'm not going to hold anything back now, but next week we'll talk about this again when we do our next book club. Fun. There was a gentleman, Brian Keeley. He's my opening case study in this chapter. Brian Keeley is the CEO of Baptist Health South, which is a medical healthcare system down in Southern Florida. At least he was at the time. Hopefully he's still there. He had this idea in his mind that he wanted to create something called destination employment, meaning when somebody comes to work at Baptist Health South or one of their subsidiaries, they will want to stay there forever. It's a destination and you stay there. They don't want to bring somebody on, have them there for a couple of years and then leave for some reason that maybe there's a better place out there. They wanted to create an experience for them. And his thought was, as many great leaders have this similar thought, we want to create the experience that is so good that it engages our employees and they're happy, and therefore they'll better engage the customers. And those customers for Baptist Health South are patients and their families. And you know what? Even the doctors and their colleagues as well, because doctors have a choice as to which hospitals they want to go to work at. So that's what he set out to do, and he accomplished the goal. People love working there. They don't want to leave there. I have somebody that I interviewed for my book, Amaze Every Customer Every Time, which we'll have to do that maybe in a couple of weeks. Was an Ace Hardware dealer, and everybody loved working there so long that the only way you could get a job is if somebody moved out of town or passed away, because nobody left, or retired, I guess. Nobody left. So there was always this long list of people that wanted to work there and applications that were being filled out. That's what destination employment looks like. So fun is fulfillment, uniqueness, and next. Fulfill people with the job. Put people in the right job. If they love what they do, they'll better engage their customers. Number two, uniqueness. Is there some talent that they have? For example, my assistant loves details. And I said, you get to choose what title you want to be called. I'm the Chief Amazement Officer at Shepherd Presentations. She says, I am the Director of Details, because she loves details. Jeslyn on our team, who does her video work, when she came to work with us, there are several responsibilities that she has. But I said, what is it that you enjoy doing most? And she said, I love video and graphics. Well, guess what she does is a big part of her job. It's video and graphics. But as an example, we use Google as one of the case studies. The Google engineers are encouraged to find a project that they're not asked to do, some other project, and they get to spend a small percentage of their time working on that project just because it's something they love to do. So that's exploiting them for their fulfillment, their uniqueness, and something that they're really good at doing. And even though it's a small percentage, people walk away saying, you know what, I love that job because I get to do things that I love. Anyway, that's the unique talent. And next, what are you excited about for this company? Is there a new product coming out? What's next? Or maybe I'm just excited about what's coming up tomorrow, the next day, or next week. So there it is, F-U-N, fun, uniqueness, and next. All right, we have time for just one or two more questions. Anything out there? How is customer service different from customer experience? Well, that's a great question. So years ago, customer service service was customer experience. Somebody said, hey, let's call it experience instead of service. And they were almost used as interchangeable words. What's the customer experience like over there? And they were talking about the interaction people had with people. But over time, service always remained there. By the way, to me, customer service is not a department. Some people say customer service is what happens when the experience goes bad, which means there's a problem, you call the customer service department. I've said this before. Service is cultural. There is a department that will field problems, complaints, questions, and more from customers. That's fine. That's a frontline customer support world responsibility. But when it comes to service, it's usually the interaction that's happening between the customer and the company, be it a problem, a sales process, but it's all those interactions. Experience is actually every interaction, every single type of interaction beyond people to people, whether it's a digital interaction, or how about this? I don't know if you remember, I have my iPhone. Now, I have been an Apple fan. I've had an iPhone. We've had Mac products. We've had, I remember when I bought my first, the music, not an iPad. It doesn't matter. But I remember when I first got that little device that helps, and I remember opening the box. The box was so cool. I mean, look at this. Just the box made me feel it was worth the money. And guess what? I opened the box of my phone. I opened the box of my iPad. I opened the box to my earpods. And I'm wow, just the packaging is amazing. Well, they've created an experience. When you go with Amazon, the customer experience includes service, but it's built in digitally. Think about it. First of all, you sign in, and now Amazon knows who you are. They have your credit card information. You can now purchase with one click. That's a great experience. But then as soon as you purchase, you get an acknowledgement, that email. Oh, that's part of the experience. That's a confidence booster. And then they tell you the item has shipped. They give you a tracking number. And sometimes you even receive an email that says your item was received. It was signed for by this person. And all of these experiences that you have, these interactions, they're digital. They're not people to people, but it's all part of the experience. So experience is really a much broader term to define what the experience is versus the service that's delivered. So hope that makes sense to you. All right, let's take one more question, and then we're going to wrap up if we can. What's the best way to handle mistakes or problems? So we talked a little bit about this last week. A mistake is an opportunity to show how good you are. And essentially, there's this 5-step process. I don't want to go over it and spend a lot of time on it again, but essentially, you want to not just fix the problem, you want to restore confidence. And I want to tie it back to the cult of amazement in just a moment. But here it is. Number 1, acknowledge the problem. Number 2, apologize. And you can flip 1 and 2. You can apologize first. Example, I can't believe that happened. I would be upset if that happened to me as well. That's your acknowledgement. I'm really sorry that it happened. Number 3, this is what we're going to do to fix it. Number 4, I'm going to act with an attitude of ownership. I don't blame it on anyone else. And number 5, I'm going to act with urgency. So I acknowledge, apologize, fix it, or discuss the resolution. I own it, even if it's not my fault, it's my opportunity. And number 5, I act with urgency. So let's go back to the 5th cult, the cult of amazement, which is the cult that you want to be in. This is what happens. There's a problem. The first time that customer has that problem, they shift. They go straight back into uncertainty. How is this customer or how is this company going to handle my issue? By the way, I feel like if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. I'm very passionate about this. I feel I may have already talked about something similar already related to this cult of uncertainty. Now we want to get them into the cult of amazement. So we fix the problem. We acknowledge, apologize, fix it. We take ownership so they feel like even if we have to pass it off to someone else, the way we do it says, hey, you're not going, this isn't my department, start all over again. You're doing it the right way, and we're acting with urgency. They're going to go, wow, that was a great experience. You move them back in a cult of amazement. Remember, we want them to also be in ownership of this experience. And when there's a problem and you resolve it, and they go, wow, even when there's a problem, I know I can always count on them. You've essentially trained them to come to you whenever there is a problem. So the next time they have a problem, they don't keep it to themselves because they know you'll take care of them, and it will be a positive, low hassle, as frictionless as possible type of experience. All right, my friends, we are basically out of time today. I know I like to hold these to about 30 to 40 minutes or so, right at about the 35-minute mark. There's a question coming in from Miles Courtney Thomas. I'm going to address this one because it's our last question. Thank you very much. And now I'm assuming Miles, I'm not sure which one in the picture is Miles, but it doesn't matter. How can we make customers feel valued in a human way despite digital interactions? Wow. So if you are a 100% digital company like Amazon, what have they done? They've created this experience that gives you confidence. And also, they make you feel a little bit like you're dealing with an in-store experience when you go back to Amazon and it says, hey, the last time you were here, you looked at this. And then you're looking at, let's just use a book as an example. You're looking at The Cult of the Customer, and down below it'll have other recommendations. Well, when you're dealing with a salesperson, the same thing will happen. Oh, do you like this? Well, let me show you something else we might have as well. Now, that's the ability to make a connection, to understand personally who they are. If you're going to live in a digital world, you have to find a way to make a connection, because otherwise you are a complete commodity to someone else. If there's no human interaction, there's no emotional connection. And what Amazon has done is and I use them as a case study, and maybe I'm spending too much time on them, but here's the point. They've done it right, because on an Amazon website, they will show you often, you can buy this item from a third party at a lower price. And guess what happens? You still buy from Amazon. Why? Because you trust them. So in the digital world, what you're trying to make the connection with is trust. Build that confidence and trust so that that customer has that emotional connection. People want to go and do business with people they know, like, and trust. If you're digital, they're probably not going to really know you, although they'll know the experience they have with you. They don't really like you as a person, but they like the experience they have with you. And the trust part is they trust that when they do business with you, it's going to be great. And by the way, make it easy, if you want to take this to the next level, make it easy for them to fall back to a human whenever possible. So if you think about the Zappos website, which ironically is owned by Amazon, if you have a problem, there's always the phone number that you call and you get straight to one of their call support people. Now, keep in mind, this is a company that is an online company. That a statistic I saw not that long ago, that is almost 20% of their interactions, of their sales, have a personal interaction with the support agent, either through chat or on the phone. So think about that. What can you do to instill confidence? That's the way you connect digitally with your customer, because you need that confidence and that trust, or else all you are is a commodity. All right. Well, that wraps it all up. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining me here. It means the world that you would spend the time to do this. If you would like the notes from today's presentation, just the slides, for example, that I couldn't show, I want you to put email claire@hyken.com and use in the subject line just the two words, cult notes, C-U-L-T, like cult of the customer, notes. And I'll send you my slide deck, which was just 5 or 6 slides. And if you ever wanted to use these slides for your own team, just to kind of walk through the cults and talk through them in a presentation, you're welcome to do so. So claire@hyken.com. All right, next week, thanks, Keisha. This has been great. Thank you. Thank you all. Robert, Miles, everybody. Thanks so much, Robert. Great to see you all. Jochen. Next week, we're going to be talking about the amazement revolution, the 7 strategies to create that amazing experience. And you've already heard one of them, fun. So we'll talk about that. But we're going to talk about creating a membership experience. We're going to talk about the after experience. We're going to talk about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. We're going to talk about building community. So those are some of the 7 strategies. I think I've given you 6 of them now. Partnership, that would be the 7th one. All right, we'll talk about that next week. Thank you all for joining. And until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.